It was a move that sent shockwaves through Washington, D.C. and beyond. In a move that surprised even the most seasoned political observers, Donald Trump, in his infinite wisdom, appointed Elon Musk as the head of the newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur known for his ventures in electric cars, space exploration and social media, seemed an unlikely choice for a government position. Yet, here he was, tasked with nothing less than overhauling the sprawling federal bureaucracy and making it, in Trump's words, leaner, meaner, and more like Tesla. From the outset, skepticism ran high. Could a Silicon Valley disruptor, accustomed to the fast-paced world of tech startups, truly navigate the labyrinthine corridors of government? Would Musk's brash style and unconventional methods clash with the entrenched culture of Washington? These questions lingered as Musk assumed his new role, but few could have predicted the sheer speed and audacity with which he would upend the status quo. In the months that followed, Musk would launch a series of bold, some would say reckless initiatives, that would leave the federal government reeling and the American public deeply divided. The Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE as it quickly became known, was the brainchild of Trump himself. This new department was designed to be a radical departure from the traditional bureaucratic approach, aiming to inject a sense of urgency and innovation into the federal government. Conceived as a means to streamline the federal government and cut costs, DOGE was granted sweeping authority to review, restructure, and even eliminate government agencies and programs. The goal was to create a leaner, more efficient government that could respond more quickly to the needs of the American people. It was a mandate for disruption, and in Musk, Trump had found the perfect disruptor. Known for his bold vision and unorthodox methods, Musk was seen as the ideal candidate to shake up the status quo and bring a fresh perspective to the federal government. Armed with a presidential mandate and a team of hand-picked loyalists, Musk wasted no time in asserting his authority. He quickly set about identifying areas of inefficiency and redundancy, determined to make swift and impactful changes. He demanded, and received, unprecedented access to the inner workings of federal agencies, often bypassing traditional channels and protocols. This direct approach allowed him to gather information quickly and implement changes without the usual bureaucratic delays. His team, composed largely of former Tesla and SpaceX employees with little to no government experience, descended upon Washington like a swarm of tech-savvy locusts, eager to impose their Silicon Valley ethos on the unsuspecting bureaucracy. They brought with them a culture of innovation, speed, and a willingness to challenge the status quo. Musk's approach to government reform was simple, some would say simplistic: identify inefficiencies, cut costs, and embrace technology. He believed that by applying the same principles that had driven his success in the tech industry, he could transform the federal government into a more agile and responsive entity. He viewed the federal government as a bloated and inefficient behemoth, ripe for a dose of Silicon Valley innovation. To Musk, the challenges of government were not so different from those he had faced in the private sector, and he was confident that his methods would yield similar success. His mantra became move fast and break things, a philosophy that had served him well in the tech world, but would prove far more consequential when applied to the machinery of government. The stakes were higher, the resistance greater, and the potential for unintended consequences much more significant. Musk's tenure at DOGE was characterized by a series of swift and often controversial actions. His approach was nothing short of a blitzkrieg, a rapid and overwhelming force that left little room for opposition or delay. He moved with a speed and decisiveness that caught many off guard, including, it seemed, the president himself. The corridors of power were abuzz with speculation and concern as Musk's unorthodox methods began to unfold. One of his first targets was the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. This agency, which had long been a cornerstone of American foreign aid, found itself in Musk's crosshairs almost immediately. Musk, long a critic of foreign aid, viewed USAID as a bloated and inefficient bureaucracy, more concerned with self-preservation than with actually helping those in need. He believed that the agency's resources were being squandered on administrative costs, rather than reaching the people who needed help the most. He demanded access to USAID's financial records and internal documents, but his requests were met with resistance from the agency's leadership. The standoff between Musk and USAID officials quickly became a public spectacle, with both sides digging in their heels. In response, Musk publicly accused USAID of being a criminal organization and ordered a freeze on its funding. His accusations were bold and unprecedented, sending shockwaves through the political landscape. When USAID officials refused to comply with his demands, Musk took the drastic step of shutting down the agency entirely, putting its thousands of employees on indefinite leave. The sudden closure left many in disbelief and uncertainty about their future. The shutdown of USAID sent shockwaves through the international community. Allies and partners who had relied on American aid were left scrambling to fill the void, while critics accused Musk of undermining global stability. It was seen as a sign that the United States was abdicating its role as a global leader in humanitarian aid. The ripple effects of this decision were felt far and wide, with many questioning the future of international aid efforts. Allies and adversaries alike expressed concern over the move, but Musk remained undeterred. He was convinced that his vision for a leaner, more effective aid organization was the right path forward. He argued that USAID was beyond saving, and that the money would be better spent elsewhere, hinting at plans to create a new, more efficient aid organization under his direct control. This new entity, he promised, would cut through red tape and deliver aid more effectively. This was just the beginning of Musk's campaign to reshape the federal government in his image. His ambitions extended far beyond USAID, as he set his sights on other key agencies. He went on to target other agencies, including the Department of Education, the Environmental Protection Agency, and even the Department of Defense. Each move was met with a mix of support and outrage. And even the Department of Defense, where his proposals for reform sparked intense debate among military officials and policymakers, drawing both praise from his supporters and condemnation from his detractors. The nation watched closely as Musk's bold vision for the federal government continued to unfold, leaving no one indifferent to his radical approach. Section 4. A nation divided: public reaction and legal challenges. Musk's actions at Doge sparked immediate and intense public debate. The nation found itself split down the middle, with fervent supporters on one side and equally passionate critics on the other. Supporters hailed him as a visionary leader, a much-needed disruptor who was finally bringing accountability and efficiency to the bloated federal government. They saw his bold moves as a breath of fresh air in a system long plagued by bureaucracy and inefficiency. They applauded his willingness to challenge the status quo and his commitment to using technology to improve government services. For them, Musk represented the future, a leader unafraid to make tough decisions for the greater good. However, Musk's critics, and they were numerous, viewed him as a dangerous demagogue, a reckless billionaire with no understanding of or respect for the principles of democratic governance. They feared his approach would erode the very foundations of democracy. They pointed to his autocratic management style, his disregard for due process, and his willingness to silence dissent as evidence that he was unfit for public office. To them, Musk's actions were not just controversial, but outright dangerous. The shutdown of USAID in particular drew widespread condemnation, with many accusing Musk of playing politics with people's lives. The abrupt halt of essential services left many vulnerable communities in dire straits. The legal challenges to Musk's authority were swift and numerous. Almost immediately, a flurry of lawsuits began to pile up, each one questioning the legality of his sweeping reforms. Labor unions representing federal employees filed lawsuits alleging that Musk's mass layoffs and agency restructurings violated their collective bargaining agreements. The unions argued that the sudden changes were not only illegal, but also inhumane. Civil rights groups sued Doge, claiming that Musk's policies disproportionately harmed minority communities. They argued that the new policies exacerbated existing inequalities and marginalized already vulnerable populations. And several former government officials, forced out by Musk's team, filed whistleblower complaints, alleging widespread abuse of power and corruption within Doge. These officials claimed that the new administration was rife with unethical practices. The legal battles over Musk's actions would drag on for years, with no clear end in sight. The courts were inundated with cases, each one more complex than the last. The courts would be forced to grapple with complex legal questions about the limits of executive power, the role of technology in government, and the very nature of democracy itself. These cases would set precedents that could shape the future of governance for generations to come. Section 5. The unraveling potential consequences of Musk's reign. As Musk tightened his grip on the federal government, concerns grew about the potential consequences of his actions. Critics warned that his efforts to dismantle the administrative state, while perhaps well-intentioned, were undermining the very institutions that ensured the functioning of a modern democracy. The mass layoffs and hiring freezes at various agencies led to a brain drain, with experienced civil servants replaced by inexperienced, albeit enthusiastic, Musk loyalists. The rapid-fire implementation of technology, while touted as a solution for inefficiency, often led to unforeseen complications and disruptions in essential services. Systems designed to process visa applications crashed, leaving thousands stranded abroad. Algorithms intended to streamline welfare distribution malfunctioned, denying benefits to those in desperate need. The chaos extended beyond American borders. The shutdown of USAID left a void in global humanitarian aid, with devastating consequences for vulnerable populations around the world. Musk's confrontational approach to international diplomacy, often conducted via Twitter tirades, strained relations with allies and emboldened adversaries. The world watched with a mixture of amusement and apprehension as the once predictable giant of American foreign policy became increasingly erratic and unpredictable.